the scene. He's got the voice that's mean, asking those questions that you never seen. He's got that fire, burning bright and clean. Andrew Keen making waves, break the routine on the Keen on show. He brings the heat, asking the minds, digging deep till they bleed. No sugar-coated truths, no lies to deceive. Andrew Keen, the master of the interview beat. He's got the knowledge, he's got the flair, challenging ideas with a fearless stare. With every question, he's uncovering what's there. Andrew Keen, a truth seeker, he's aware.
Hello everybody. As is my wont, when I've got nothing to do, I go onto YouTube and I came across this very interesting video.
Whole AI and trust thing.
Let's do it.
Today, we're taking a deep dive into Professor Toby Walsh's In AI We Trust.
Yeah, good one.
And, you know, it feels especially relevant given, well, everything going on. I mean, how tech's changing, how we see the world, each other.
Absolutely. And we're not just talking about some random academic here.
Yeah.
This is Toby Walsh.
Exactly. This is Toby Walsh, not some random academic. And I've got the real Toby Walsh with us. He's in Cairns Airport on his way to a much-earned vacation. Toby, you, of course, created that YouTube clip. Not of course, because when I first heard it, it sounded authentic to me. Tell me about the video and why and how you made this.
Always a pleasure to be on with you, Keen. It's AI generated. I'd written an essay, 5,000 word essay, so it would take like 20 minutes to read out the essay. And Google have released a new tool based upon Gemini, fine-tuned version of Gemini.
Yeah, the essay is called In AI We Trust, What to Expect in Our Technological Future.
And so they've got this tool which will summarize scientific paper or an essay that you've written as a conversation. And I did nothing. I just put the essay into the tool and it comes out with that somewhat convincing 10-minute conversation between those two speakers that, yeah, as you said, could possibly fool people. I think, you know, the question you're going to have to ask, is that the future of many a podcast?
Have you just made me redundant? Not you, of course. It's those awful people at Google, Toby. Are you all making people like me redundant? Are you replacing humans when it comes to conversations? It's not just online; it's in real life as well with bots.
Yeah, I must admit, there's a lot of hype around AI, and most of it I'm quick to dismiss. I've spent the last 40 odd years, researching AI. But every now and again, I do come across something that really does stop me in my tracks, and this was one of them. I mean, I remember the previous moment to this was actually the day that GPT-3 came out, and I remember playing with that and thinking, oh, that is quite an advance, that is quite significant, that is going to have quite an impact. And seeing this as well, it got that same sort of feeling. This is really quite impressive. And is, a signpost of the sorts of things that we can expect in the future.
As they say in Silicon Valley, this changes everything. So, is this a tool? Is it? Yeah, I mean, you're a sophisticated technologist, so you can use this stuff. Is this a product, or did you have to put it all together?
No, it's an experimental product. I mean, they have Google put it out on their blog. You just have to put the text or the PDF, if you like, of what you want summarized, and the rest is done automatically. And it did a very competent job. It plays to the strength of large language models. I always say to people, we shouldn't have called it generative AI. The fact that they generate fancy pictures or fancy videos is perhaps not their most useful capability. Their most useful capability is what's happening here, which is their ability to summarize. And it's doing a fantastic job of taking the content of that essay and summarizing it. Now, I'll praise myself by saying, well, I think it was probably a pretty reasonably written essay, so it had some quite good source material to work from. But then I think it did actually a remarkably good job of, in a quite an entertaining way, summarizing the content of quite a dry technical essay.
Right. So, and we're going to hear a little bit more of it later. So it summarized this essay you wrote, "In AI We Trust, What to Expect in Our Technological Future." Did you have to program how many speakers, or is it just always going to be two people talking to one another?
Oh no, I mean, they've fine-tuned it, so it's these two speakers always.
And it's always a male and a female, both sounding like rather average, to be polite, television announcers.
It is, but you've got to just see this just as a trial, right? So we could change this to be Keen and someone else. We could change this to be whoever you like, because we could, of course, we can imitate anyone's voice
redundant,
very easily as well.
Not any point anymore.
Well, no, I hope there's still something. I mean, if I was being critical, there were a few key points of the essay that he didn't pick up. He did, I think one of the opening gambits I put out is that these are old fears that go back.
Let's have another clip. Yeah, well, you've got an old fear clip. Let's listen to what else these two smart machines were saying to one another.
It's an interesting observation about Hollywood, how they always make AI out to be this big existential threat, robots taking over, that kind of thing.
Yeah, the Terminator, right. HEL 9000, the whole shebang.
Exactly. But why are we so obsessed with killer robots, you think? It's like a go-to movie plot.
Well, I mean, it taps into a primal fear, doesn't it? This idea that we might create something even more powerful than us, something that could decide we're not needed anymore.
Okay, yeah.
We're not needed anymore. You brought that out of me, Toby. I'm beginning to feel, I've always felt rather redundant, but now particularly redundant. Is that true, though, when it comes to these Hollywood narratives? You're one of the world's most authoritative AI experts. Is this what ultimately drives our fear, our own redundancy?
I do think there is something to that. I mean, these are very old tropes that go back to the ancient Greeks, indeed. The fear that our creations will get the better of us. So, it's been the case ever since we tamed fire. What really impressed me at that point, this is very early on in the conversation, was that the male voice slipped in this idea that this is a primal fear. That wasn't something that I had explicitly said.
Oh, so it interpreted it from the essay on, which, as he said, is well worth reading. In AI We Trust, What to Expect in Our Technological Future. You didn't mention the words primal fear, but they took it.
Not at all. I mean, it was implicit. It was implied in some sense if you read it and understood what I was saying. And so at that point I was thinking, yeah, well, actually, that's pretty good. It's actually gone above and beyond summarizing it and actually tried to explain it to me. Because, obviously it's based on Gemini, so it's got half of the internet poured in there and lots of things about primal fears and the like.
It's lucky that my wife works for Google, otherwise I'd probably be homeless like the rest of the people in San Francisco. In all seriousness, Toby, what about business models? I mean, you put this in, you own this, but if someone could have just stolen one of your essays and put it in, you have an interesting clip on surveillance.
Think about all the data we just hand over to companies. Every click, every search. Professor Walsh calls it surveillance capitalism.
Because we're the product, not the customer.
Exactly. Even if we're not doing anything wrong, just the thought of being watched, it changes how we act.
Makes you think twice about speaking your mind, huh?
And that's the thing, that's self-censorship. That eats away at a free society even faster.
Not only makes you feel free about speaking what you say, about giving out your stuff. I'm not sure, Toby, did you appropriate the term surveillance capitalism? Everyone seems to.
That's the one mistake, one significant
mistake. I hope you credited Shoshana Zuboff. You didn't steal it from her.
Yeah, no, I did. In the essay, I quoted her, and the AI failed to do that, and sort of implies, if you somewhat ambiguously said, that it was a phrase that I came up with, which of course not at all true. I just used it. So that was the one point where I thought, oh, yeah, actually, yes, it's not perfect. It has made.
Well, it's not perfect, but from your point of view, it makes you look good. I'm sure if Shoshana Zuboff was listening to this, she'd be rather irritated that it's Toby Walsh's name is associated with the.
Well, I'm
Toby
glad we've.
You know,
I'm glad you and I have corrected the record.
Toby is of intellectual property, of ownership. Anyone can take anything and put it in and claim it as theirs.
Well, yes. I mean, that's the thing with these large language models. They're trained on our data, and now maybe they're going to be, outputting our data as well. So yes, it is something that we have to. I think we should, be having a robust conversation, because this is good, but it's only going to get better.
Exactly, and that's the chilling thing. This is early. It's going to be made into conversations that most people won't be able to distinguish between machine and person. It really is Blade Runner. You use the term robust conversation. You're a polite, polite academic. Other people might use a different term. What do you mean by robust conversation on this?
I think we should be pushing back against the liberties that be taken with our data on intellectual property. I should add as well, I mean, it doesn't have to be these artificial voices. It could be trained to sound like you, or trained to sound like Obama, or anyone that you would want it to be. Or it could be trained to sound like me, and I might not be producing them, and someone else might be gaining all the
right. And presumably this product, which, as you say, is in a kind of beta stage, which you got your hands on, it's going to be refined so that all the voices will be customized. You can have more than 2 conversationalists. I mean, Google would love, I'm assuming, to productize it. I'm guessing OpenAI and Anthropic have similar sorts of products.
Yes, I mean, Google, there's very little secret in the source here. Once you know this could be done, it wouldn't be hard for any of the other companies in this space to fine-tune their models to do something similar, and be able to, what is this the future of podcasting?
Yeah, I mean, how can we improve, Toby, that it's you and I speaking to one another and not a couple of bots?
Well, indeed, in the very near future, you could easily do that. You could easily make this an artificial video of you and me, artificial voices of us, and the conversation generated by AI. We could, I could go on my holiday early, and so could you.
Yeah, well, we could just all go and live in Cairn. The only problem is that how are we going to pay for it? Since none of us will have any jobs.
Yes, yeah, it is interesting, and it's it's not perhaps in the places that we expected. 5 years ago, when people used to ask me, what's the safest job, I always used to say, something like, artist, graphic designer. Those aren't going to be replaced. Well, we're already
podcast host, right? So for you, this is as big a deal as when you first heard GPT 3 or 4. This changes everything for you.
Yeah, I think what we're seeing now is that it was somewhat surprising that the first app we saw was this very generic one where we got chatbots that could answer questions from everything about astronomy to zoology, which is a bit of a party piece. Unless you're going on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, why would you need such a bot? But now we're seeing, examples like this where they're fine-tuning them, they're exploiting the multimodality. So this is something that can speak as well as construct the script. And before long, it's going to be the video as well that goes with it. So yes, I think we're starting to see there are going to be really interesting fine-tuned variants of these models that do some really quite sophisticated, challenging things.
Gary, I was going to call you Gary. Toby.
I know Gary well.
Gary Marcus was on the show earlier this week. He's one of the most outspoken and articulate and controversial skeptics of all this. What do you think Gary would make of all this?
Well, I think he does.
What would his critique be? Or somebody like Gary who really argues that much of this is still a bit of a frothy Silicon Valley sort of thing.
Well, I mean, he would be right to push back anyone claiming that this is going to, have the intelligence of Mr. Andrew Keen, for example. It only worked.
It should be so lucky.
It only worked, I would suggest, because it was fed a pretty well-written essay on which to extract all that juicy content. without that, I think it would be quite pedestrian if you ask me, just like if you ask ChatGPT.
But
to
let
summarize
me
something
extrapolate further. I mean, you put one of your essays in. Let's say you put all your work into this LLM, or I put all my shows. I've got almost 3,000 shows.
Yes.
I've only got certain amounts of party tricks. The machine can figure it out. There's only certain amounts of questions you can ask. And as you know from your work, you put it all together. So this is just from one essay. What happens if you put all your life's work, your life's thought, your novels, your nonfiction, your songs, your movies?
Oh, you're right. It would learn the style of Mr. Keene. And it would learn the way that you phrase things. It would learn the sorts of lines of questioning. It would learn the politics of Mr. Keene. And it would be a pretty good imitator of that. I'm not sure it's going to evolve like Mr. Keene evolves quite as well as you do. But if we just wanted to...
It's going to replace me. I'm redundant. How far, Toby, are we away from this? I mean, as you say, we already have a workable beta product that tricked me at first. I mean, these sound like humans, and they've ingested your essay and created a really interesting, intriguing conversation around it.
Yeah. Well, really, it's just a matter of the training data. So if you put the effort into collecting that training data together, in the very near future, within the next year or two, we could have a Keene bot that does a pretty good job of. And of course, at the moment we're getting the AI to do both sides of the conversation. Well, speech recognition good enough that we could actually do the AI actually doing only one side of the conversation and having a human on the other side of the conversation.
And of course, we could add currently the thing you put up on YouTube. I call it a thing. It's probably a rather kind description. What you put up on YouTube is just audio. It could have video. You could have a video image.
We could synthesize a headshot of you that's speaking.
When I look at myself, I always look the same on these stupid videos. Toby, the application that always seems to be the most viable when it comes to AI is a personal assistant. When you put all this in to build a personal assistant for you or I, we have predictable lives, predictable needs. Surely we're not that far off from that either, are we?
No, I don't think we're that far off either. No. We can. It is. That's definitely part of our future. I mean, Val Harrion, who said, the way to think about the future is to think what rich people have today. Well, rich people have personal assistants who take care of the mundane things of their lives, and certainly you could imagine training a personal assistant like this to answer the phone for you and book restaurants for you and do all those things that know all about you and your preferences.
Yeah, and not just that, but almost be able to think for yourself. You're in the airport at Cairns. You thought you'd find a quiet place, but it was slightly noisy. So we weren't sure whether we were going to do this. We decided to go ahead with it. Presumably, we could have a bot who would be able to advise me or you on whether this was the right moment to do a podcast, whether the background noise was too much.
We could, and already Zoom offers you the possibility of sending your bot to the interview, so you don't have to do it yourself.
So this is for real, this revolution, Toby. Unlike Gary, you think that we're on the brink of a genuine revolution.
I would agree with Gary that we're a long way off AGI, of intelligence that.
Yeah, but AGI is again a sort of a semantic game because that doesn't tell us. So what?
But what we can do, the capabilities of the AI that we have today, is starting to make inroads on a lot of things. And actually, what I take from this is I took this from GPT-3 as well, is that we've been overestimating human intelligence. There's a huge amount of stuff that we do.
Not a hard thing to do, Toby. You've got a great introduction. Your quote from E.O. Wilson for the essay. The real problem of humanity is the following. We have Paleolithic emotions, medieval institutions, and godlike technology. I think that sums it all up, doesn't it? And he wrote that in
Yeah, well, I'm not.
2009, before we had GPT-3 or 4, or what you're playing with now.
Well, I wouldn't call it godlike. I think that's putting it on too much of a pedestal, an altar. But yes, I mean, we now have technologies that do lots of things. And actually, what I take from that is that those things required less intelligence than we thought they did. That there are moments where we stop and think carefully, critically about what we're doing. But a lot of stuff that we're doing is quite formulaic, quite by rote. And these large language models, foundation models, are fantastic at learning how to do those things by rote.
And I'm not sure if it's just me. Maybe I'm somewhat of a pessimist. I've been accused of that many times before. But as we acquire this, maybe not godlike technology, but magic-like technology, is it actually making us more stupid? I mean, as we go on X or these other social networks, we seem to be behaving more and more, to borrow a word from E.O. Wilson, Paleolithic in our behavior.
Yeah, I think that's a very real fear, that we are dumbing ourselves down as we hand over many of those things that we did to machines, whether it be expressing ourselves or interviewing each other, that we will, the brain is a muscle, and we won't be exercising that muscle as much as we did.
So what are we going to do about it? Your YouTube piece ends with some how to fix. So let's listen to what your smart bots, or the bots who downloaded your essay, say, and then let's get to the real Toby Walsh's fix for all this.
This all sounds pretty hopeless, like we're drowning in distrust here.
Yeah, it's a huge challenge. But Professor Walsh, he does offer some hope. Solutions, both tech ones and just like how we live in this new world.
Okay, give me some good news then. What can we actually do?
Well, first off, we have to rethink our whole relationship with technology, right? Not just, ooh, shiny new gadget. More like, hold on, what does this thing actually do?
Be more skeptical.
Right. We need to demand better transparency, accountability from those companies.
What about laws? Can't we make some rules about this stuff?
Professor Walsh, he's all for stronger regulations. Data privacy, how content is moderated online, all that. Treat those social media platforms more like publishers. They have to be responsible for what's on there.
No more hiding behind the, we're just a platform excuse.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He also talks about raising the age of consent for social media, just like alcohol, tobacco. Those platforms are designed to be addictive, right?
Interesting. I mean, we don't give kids cigarettes and car keys, so.
Right. And on the tech side, things like digital watermarking, blockchain, ways to know if something's real or fake.
So fight fire with fire.
We have to get better at verifying what we see online.
Like that old saying, trust but verify.
Exactly. And honestly, one of the most important things, supporting real journalism.
Because even with all the tech in the world, we still need humans out there doing the real work.
Absolutely. Holding power to account, you can't automate that. Professor Walsh, he's clear. A strong press that's essential for any democracy.
So where does this leave us, the listeners? We've got our 7 drivers of distrust. What now?
Professor Walsh, he says we got to be better digital citizens, more mindful, more critical.
Can't just be passive, got to get involved.
And understand what's at stake here. Our whole way of life, really.
This has been a lot, but so insightful. Thank you. It's a conversation we need to keep having.
Absolutely. Now, for everyone listening, think about this. If our digital world is all about what we each want to see, how do we make sure those big truths, the ones we need to trust each other, how do those survive? Something to think about. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, and a huge thank you to Professor Toby Walsh for his work. We highly recommend you check out his full essay, In AI We Trust. We'll link it in the show notes. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and question everything.
Question everything, including what you listen to. In AI We Trust. Trust seems to be the key word here in terms of fixes. Toby, what is the fate of trust, or what can be the fate of trust in the 21st century, in our age of AI, when we have machines that are able to replicate smart conversations that basically trick most of us into thinking they're actually humans?
Well, I think that is one of the key challenges for the next decade or two. It's not just our trust in what we're finding online. It's our trust in each other, our trust in our institutions, I think that breakdown is at the root of many of the problems that we face today.
One of the solutions that they take from your essay is laws, stronger regulations. That seems to be the standard response. Is this problematic in an age where governments are less and less credible and less functional, maybe less in Australia than in other parts of the world, particularly North America and Western Europe?
Well, governments are the only institutions that have the right to tax us and to lock us away. As long as they still have those significant powers, I think they're going to still hold sway upon, setting the guardrails in which corporations, which work at the generosity of our governments to act. So yeah, I mean, politics is certainly going through a troubled, difficult period. Politicians are not very well trusted. There's a lot that we need to improve in terms of our democratic processes and our trust in them. But they still are going to be absolutely central to how we do deal with this.
Toby, are some of your solutions 20th century ones for a 21st century world? You talk about raising the age of consent for social media. That's been talked about a lot. Is that, firstly, aren't kids more sophisticated than adults in their use of this? Kids might be more accurate in terms of determining whether or not these are machine-created conversations. But isn't it easy to, can one really create walls online where people under 14 or 12 or 10 won't be able to use social media? Is that practical?
It's immensely practical. It requires persuading two companies or regulating two companies to do one thing. People always raise whether we want it or not, it's actually just too difficult to do. It's incredibly easy to do. No 13-year-old goes out and buys themselves their own device. It's bought for them by an adult. When you buy a device, you need to register the age of the user of the device. And then the device can, you've actually built it into the operating system of the device. So you've only got to persuade two companies, Apple and Google for Android, to build that into the operating system. Like they build the language that the device is going to work in. And then any app or any service that can determine whether this is age appropriate for the owner of this particular device.
My kids now out of college, but when they were in college, they used to have fake IDs or share IDs for getting into bars. Why won't people be able to just share devices or buy fake devices to get into social media?
Yeah, well, they'd have to. That's the thing. They'd have to buy the fake device. But if you're 12, you don't have the resources to buy yourself, an iPhone. So you'd have to, of course, it's not absolutely perfect. It's just made the barrier very high for them to get access to it. The device that their parents gave them, so that they're connected at school and they can ring for help, is one that's going to be, have those age restrictions on it. Because when you bought the device, you set that age, and it's impossible to lower the age on the device.
Shoshana Zuboff and her surveillance capitalist crowd, they would be shocked that you're doing away with anonymity. Do we have to, in this new age, for better or worse, are you suggesting we have to sacrifice anonymity? Because
it's not anonymity.
Hold on, if Google or Apple build this into their new phones or smart devices, then it can be used in all sorts of other ways too, in terms of anonymous posts and what people do or don't say to one another.
Your identity is not known; it's just your age. Just as the device already knows the language, so we already know what your mother tongue is because you set that when you turn the device on for the first time. So we're just adding another few bits of information, which is the age of the person using this device. Now that may identify the person. If you know the age of the person, their geographical location, you might be able to in some cases narrow it down to a particular person. But I think actually the imposition is on your anonymity is only very slight.
As we speak, Instagram have announced quote unquote, at least according to the New York Times, sweeping changes on child safety. Do you think that some of the messages that you put forward at the end of the essay, are they getting through to big tech, to companies like Facebook and Instagram?
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm absolutely convinced that Instagram did this to actually because they're going to be forced to do it very soon. I mean, here in Australia, the Prime Minister's just announced they're going to have age restrictions on social media. They haven't announced exactly what age it's going to be or exactly how it's going to be enforced, but they've made it very clear. It's become something that, that many politicians now are hinting is going to happen. It's going to happen, I imagine in the next year or two. The tech companies are smart enough to realize best for them to start doing stuff voluntarily before they're forced to do it.
What do you make of all these clashes now, Toby, between big tech companies and governments? We've got the French government trying to put Durov, the founder of Telegram, in jail. We've got X being banned in Brazil and Elon Musk being threatened with imprisonment if he goes there. Is this a feature of this new age? Is this going to be the real new war between big tech companies and governments around the world?
Well, war is a strong noun to use.
Well, I use that sort of metaphorically.
But indeed, I think there's a growing appetite and a realization amongst politicians. I get to speak to quite a few of them now, and they're quite ready, quite willing to have the conversation about, well, what should we regulate and how should we go about doing that? That we've given the tech sector a huge amount of freedom, and I think there was some justification for that. There was a lot of feeling that you couldn't and you shouldn't regulate the tech space for many years, and certainly at the beginning of the internet, 20 years ago, that was probably right. It allowed great innovation to happen. There's now, I think, increasing feeling that you can and you should. That is entirely possible. There's a number of examples of regulations that have been successful and useful, and that you should, because otherwise it's a race to the bottom, and these tech companies will do things that are not in the public's best interest.
Toby, you're in Australia, large Chinese community, particular sensitivity, I think, to the geopolitics in the South China Sea. What's your take on the TikTok situation in the US? Do you think are you fearful or sympathetic to many Americans' desire to ban TikTok, throw it out of the country?
I think it's become a bit of a bit too much of a focus, in the sense that there are many things to be worried about, and why all those fears have focused themselves down onto just one tech company. I mean, the TikTok has done some very good things with its algorithms, very effective things with its algorithms. Interesting to see Facebook following. Facebook trying to emulate the success that TikTok have had with its algorithms. And of course, like any Chinese tech company, there are very strong porous links to the government, the Communist Party, that one should be aware of. But I don't think TikTok is as much an existential threat as a financial threat.
I tend to agree. It's hard to imagine the Chinese Communist government searching through TikTok for people's secrets. Finally, you end with your solutions with supporting real journalism. In these solutions to all the problems of big tech, we always hear this. Is this realistic? Why do you call for real journalism at the end of the conversation? Was this a focus in the essay? In AI, we trust. We need stronger journalistic institutions.
Well, I'm painfully aware that from both a technical and a financial perspective, tech has been undermining the ability of journalism to do its important jobs for the state, to call power account, to uncover corruption and misdoings. It's both by democratizing to a certain extent the way that news is now delivered, that has undermined the authority of the voices that journalists used to have, and secondly, by perhaps even more critically, by undermining the finances. All of that advertising income that was cross-subsidizing good journalism has been stolen by the tech industry, and that is certainly undermining the ability of journalists to be able to do their important function in society.
And again, I'm not sure of what's happening in Australia, but in the US, one party in particular seems to be very hostile to traditional journalism. So on the one hand, we have all this technology, which in itself is undermining trust. And then part of the public discourse is to encourage distrust of journalism. So it's not just technology, is it? It's a broader cultural problem or a political problem.
No, you're right. I mean, there's a growing distrust for all institutions, and yes, and there's a lot of places where politicians have been using that to silence their critics, or to try and silence their critics at least. And again, we've seen this in Australia as well, where the national broadcaster, the Australian ABC, have come under significant political pressures, financial pressures, because at the end of the day, the politicians decide how much money they get. And again, that's something to be concerned about.
Finally, I wonder whether if we had someone more sympathetic to this technology on the show, like my friend Keith Tier, I always do a weekly show with him. He always finds the sunny side of all these debates. He might argue that the technology that you reveal in this fascinating video that you put up on YouTube, derived from your essay, would offer entrepreneurial journalists, perhaps like myself, an opportunity. I could be more creative. I could have a couple of bots who would be guests, and I could actually do a pretty interesting job. Am I, in all seriousness, Toby, going to be able to hang on to my lead over these bots, or are they going to overtake me?
I think at the end of the day, I mean, it comes down to what the consumer, the listener, the public choose at the end of the day, who they want to listen to. I'm going to choose to listen to you, because I think
I hope so. I invited you on, Toby. You'd be
yeah, these bots may entertain me, but at the end of the day, I am looking for those razor sharp questions, the inquiring, keen mind that says something that you're not expecting, and not. Whereas the bots are going to be trained on repeating the same formula that they've always ever repeated. So I think there's still hope for people at the peak of their performance. But if you're just looking to be entertained, I think this is a way to generate huge amounts of content that's going to entertain us.
Well, maybe there's some hope. There's certainly some hope when we got guys like you, Toby, around. Your essay, In AI We Trust, What to Expect in Our Technological Future. Important essay. Where can people read it?
It's forthcoming in a book. But if you want to put it in the show notes, you're welcome to do that.
Well, where are you gonna? Isn't it online somewhere?
I'll have to put it online. It's a book that's about to be published.
Well, enjoy your holiday, Toby, in Cairns. I'm very envious. I'm sure it'll be much warmer there than in San Francisco at the moment. Good luck with everything, and we'll get you. But when's the book going to be out?
Beginning of next year.
You're going to get an AI to write it for you?
No, I promise you that it will be written by me.
Can I step on the scene?